For this exercise, you guys are going to copy a layout from a magazine. So you're going to use the attached file to this little mini assignment. So what we're going to do, again, as always, hit pause, rewind, fast forward, whatever you need to do, but stay with me and do what we do. So we're going to begin by going to File, New, Document. And in this case, this is going to be a single page. So we're going to start on page 1, and it's going to be 1 page long. We'll click Create. So here is our background. And what I want you to do is go to File, Place to get this in. The way you get stuff in here typically is to go to File, Place. And we want to get that layout in there. And once we have it, we're going to drag it up and put it onto Document. And now our goal is to recreate this. And in so doing, you will know how to use a lot of the tools in InDesign. And after you do this, you should feel a lot more comfortable in InDesign. So this is a really old magazine layout that I've had for a long time, and that I've used in my classes to have people basically just trace over so that you understand how to use a lot of the tools in InDesign. But what we're going to do now that we have this on the background is we're going to look at our layers. So layers are important. They're important in mainly in Photoshop, but also in all the other programs. Photoshop uses them the most. Now what we want to do is just click on it once so that it's selected, and we're going to go up here and we're going to set the opacity of this layer. And let's bring it down to about 50%. So we want to see it, but not really. And it's just going to become just in the background, so something we're going to trace over so we know where things go. I also want to lock that layer. So right next to the eye, there's a little blank spot. If I click it, it will lock that layer so no one can draw on it, and you can't move it, which is really nice. And so what we're going to do on the layer above it, we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to draw everything on that layer. So in the layers palette, there's a little paragraph right here. So we're going to click that and make a new layer. And we'll say OK. And I'm going to make sure that I've selected that layer. So I'm working on layer 2, not on layer 1, but actually on layer 2. And we need to figure out our grid system. So there's actually a couple grid systems happening here. And for us to figure out what they are, I know this goes beyond the guidelines here a little bit. And we can fix all this stuff, but let's just kind of pretend like it's close enough. We're going to go up to Layout, and we're going to go to Create Guides. And we're just going to kind of watch what we're doing. So we're going to continue to increase the columns, and I'm just watching the screen to see what those columns look like and how things line up. So what we notice is the top 2/3. So if we think rule of thirds, we have a line here, here, and here. But we see that the top 2/3 are using 4 columns. And I'm looking at the type. I'm looking at the text to see where they terminate and where they end. So I know this is not exact. We could probably make it a little smaller. It's just a picture I took of a magazine page. But it's in 4 columns. And if we look at the bottom one, if I go down a second, this one is laid out approximately in thirds. They have 1, 2, and 3 columns, even though this goes over just a little bit. So we just want to set up our column guides because it's always the first thing we do. We'll click OK. So the goal is for you to recreate this, but there's a couple things in here I'll show you before I send you on your way to do the best that you can to try to wrap this up. I also want you to try to make it look like the colors of, fix the colors of the fonts. If there are boxes behind the fonts, to add those to create these shapes. These are all just shapes. So this might be one big orange shape with a white shape on top of it. And then the text is on top of that. But if I look at these pictures, I notice that they have drop shadows on them. So to make a picture box, and they also have strokes on them, I can grab the rectangle tool and click and drag out a box that's approximately the same size. And I'll just flip the color over so we can actually just see that it's a solid. And I'm going to move it over to the side as well, just to see what we're looking at. But I see that there is a stroke. So right now it's a fill. It's a black fill. And right here, there is no stroke. So I'm going to click on the stroke, go to swatches, and I'm going to select paper, which is white. And then I just need to up the stroke weight so it's thick enough. So the stroke can be found up here as one of the options. So I'm going to click up, 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 until it looks approximately about the same size. So that's probably pretty close to what they got. And of course, I can also put a picture in here. You guys remember that, file, place, go grab, some picture that will work in there. So maybe I'll take this one, and then I'm just going to rescale it so that if I right click, I can go to fitting, and I can fill the frame proportionally. And I can also flip it around. Remember, if I right click, I can go to transform, and I can flip it horizontally so that it fills the box. So there we go. Nice portrait, great light, studio work with studio strobes, hair, makeup, all the stuff that we would do, kind of an AP photo, so professional type images. We also notice that this thing's slightly at an angle. It's been rotated. So with the black arrow, if you notice the cursor, how it changes. Once it's curved like that, I can click and drag and rotate that, and now it's at an angle. And the last thing that I'm going to show with you is that it has a drop shadow. So to add a drop shadow to an image, if I go up to Object, Effects, there are things that we can do to the picture. In this case, we're going to add a drop shadow. And I kind of want to make it look similar to what they got. So there's a lot of options, just like in Photoshop for this type of a thing. We can set the offset so it's maybe not such a big drop shadow to make it a little bit smaller. You can change the angle, although this is a good angle, and the opacity of that drop shadow. I'll just pretend like it's good enough. And there we go. So that's how we make a box that has a stroke, how we rotate it, and how we put a drop shadow. And then on top of it, you'll notice that there's text. So you'll need to create text that goes on top of that as well. How do you make a circle? Well, behind the rectangle tool is the ellipse tool. So if you click and drag, you get ovals. But if you hold the shift key, you get circles. And because this circle is the same style of formatting that this other rectangle's in, I can do all that again manually, or I can take the eyedropper and I can just click on it, and it will apply the attributes of something else. Same is true for text boxes. Once you have one, you can click to apply the attributes of others. How do we put boxes behind text? So say I type baby on board, and I'm just gonna pick I don't know, I'll just pick a font here. Try to find fonts that actually look like what that looks like. But I'm just gonna do this quickly here. I also noticed that it's center justified, so I'm gonna click the center justification, and then my font size is really, really small. I gotta get it a lot bigger. And then lastly, my leading, the space between the lines, is too much, so I'm gonna keep compressing that, and we'll say that's good enough. So I do see that it's in white, so I'm gonna set it to white. And then I have these pink boxes behind it. So to make boxes, again, just like I made picture boxes, I can make boxes for really anything. And we'll pretend like that's good enough, and then I'll set it in some pink. I would pick a different pink, but I'll say that's good enough. And then I'm going to arrange this. I'm going to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back, so it's behind. And then I can copy and just paste more of them, and just stretch them out to the appropriate sizes. And I know this is smaller. I should make the word on smaller, but again, let's pretend like I did it. That'll go there. That'll go there. And then I can just take these two elements and arrange them to the back. So Object, Arrange, Send to Back. So we do this a lot in Illustrator. And then lastly, for this whole element, I might just click and drag and select all of it and group it. So it's one element instead of many. So if I go to Object, Group, this now functions as one element. Again, I can rotate it, and that's pretty good. So your goal is to continue and complete this layout. So you know enough to do this. You know how to make boxes. You know how to change the color of those boxes. You know how to add a stroke. You know how to drop shadow. It's a matter of just picking fonts, and then if you highlight the font, you can change the color of it down here. You can change the color of boxes down here as well, if you think Illustrator. You can rotate things using the rotate tool. So your goal is to finish this single page layout, use the column guides to balance out your content, make it really clean, make it adhere to the column guides, not so much the background. And after you're done with this, you should feel pretty comfortable in Adobe InDesign and be able to actually use it.